So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm here in KL, working at the International School at Park City. I'm a class teacher, year 6 teacher, and also the EdTech and Innovation Lead for the school. I'm making a transition in August to a different school, still in KL actually, to be the primary digital learning lead. Oh, I'm also a Google certified coach, Apple learning coach as well. So I'm working with teachers one-to-one as part of my job as well in supporting them and coaching them in integration technology into the classroom. So before I set this up, I asked a few people on LinkedIn about what things they found the most interesting, the thing that they would like to learn the most about, and collaboration came up as one of the key things, as something that's not only very relevant for us at the moment, but something that can be a bit of a challenge sometimes as well. So I just wanted to go over just a few of the reasons why I think collaboration is a really important topic to touch on today. Enhanced problem solving, first of all. So students being able to bring different perspectives and ideas to the table, working as a group or as a pair, can really help with thinking critically, considering lots of different solutions. Students can explain their thinking, help them to refine their ideas, and it's just a more constructive way of working. They can also develop communication skills, so they can learn to articulate, listen, respond thoughtfully, and respect each other's opinions. It, of course, reflects the real world around them as well, and where they're going to be heading in the future of their education, but also in the world of work as well. Success often depends on working well with other people and having those great communication and collaboration skills. It brings out great leadership qualities in people as well. Students take on different roles. They can guide and support each other. They get to bring all of their strengths together and leverage those and show a kind of appreciation for diversity and different learning styles. And hopefully reduces some frustration and builds some confidence as well, working with a group. They can learn from each other's strategies, build confidence, and encourage a growth mindset. So these are all the things why this is a kind of passion and interest of mine. I believe it's really important to get students working collaboratively with technology. And with that in mind, I just wanted to touch on the ISTE standards for students. I'm not sure how familiar you might be with these already, but these are really kind of the foundations of empowering student voice and ensuring that learning is a student-driven process in terms of using technology. And I just wanted to pick out a couple in particular. Firstly, the creative communicator standard, where you can see here students need to communicate clearly, express their ideas clearly for a variety of purposes. So this is not just learning for school, but this is also preparing them for the future as well. They can also choose the appropriate platforms, selecting the right tool, giving students choice so that they can express themselves in the way that's most appropriate for them. And using tools to visually communicate complex ideas. And this is something that I'm working on with my year 6s at the moment, and how they can use elements of design to show their ideas clearly when they've got lots of things coming together at the same time. And then the global collaborator standards is really relevant to this as well. So students using digital tools to work effectively in teams. So this isn't just doing group work, but being able to collaborate with communication skills, being accountable in group work and in partners and projects. Students can use digital tools to connect with peers from a variety of backgrounds, bringing in unique problem-solving approaches, contributing constructively to teams. Well, I'll talk about assigning roles and giving feedback and things later on as well. And just investigating a variety of different solutions. So co-creating solutions together. So some of the issues that I found with collaboration in class, or getting started with it, perhaps if you're less confident or your students have less experience with it. Firstly, distractions in the classroom. When students are working together with technology, it can be a bit of a recipe for off-task behavior. So we'll talk about ways to manage that in a moment. Varying levels of teacher confidence. So it might be that you're super confident with using technology in the classroom and that you've got lots of project ideas. Some teachers less so. So it's about how do you start that process of collaboration in the classroom. I'll mention a little bit about inclusivity as well, making sure that students are all included in that collaborative environment. It's not uncommon for students to be less active in group situations? And also, how do you assess collaborative learning as well? How do you track student progress? How do you monitor their contributions to group work? So these are just a few of the things that I just wanted to go through before we have a look at some examples. So distractions, first of all, one of the things that I like to start off with when introducing collaborative tasks with technology, obviously talking about handling devices. This might be something that you do anyway at the beginning of the year if your students are using iPads, tablets, computers, whatever it might be. Agreeing on a signal to stop and come back together for those moments where it's important to bring them back and discuss something that's happening in the classroom, and also modeling that language as well. And how do you encourage your teammates? How do you resolve conflicts within teams? So those are the kind of key core things that I think are really important to start off with. And then once you start introducing collaboration, then how do you assign roles and expectations to groups? And what I like to do to start off with is maybe assign them a color, like red and blue, or letters A and B. And on my slides, have that kind of separated. So each partner, if they're working in partners, each partner has a really good understanding of how they can contribute, what their assigned role is, just to begin with. And as they get more confident with that, then that becomes more apparent in how they can contribute to the group. You might have seen driver navigator before, especially with coding. So one student being the driver, being in charge of the device and controlling that, the other person being the navigator and explaining perhaps the steps to working through the task, or giving them feedback along the way, offering ideas, and then swapping those roles regularly so they both get those opportunities. And another way to kind of clarify expectations and make sure that students are on task is make sure that they know what the expectations are for that lesson. You can show them like a visual walkthrough, maybe a pre-recorded screen recording, something like that, or sharing your display on the big display in the classroom so that they can see the process that leads to their final output. So you can lock all their screens. You can see here in my little video. You can view their screens on your device, and you can lock them remotely. You can mute them and things like that. But it only works on Bluetooth, and this is what I share with them straight away, is that like outside the classroom, I no longer have control. I can't see what they're doing at home. I can't lock their screen once they're out of the classroom. But it is a good way to kind of keep them accountable, and so that they know that you know that you're seeing what they're doing on their devices and you have control over that. And yeah, just things like setting up timers and things so that they are accountable for what they're working on, what is expected of them. Maybe even like a physical sand timer as well for younger students. And then you've got things like, if you're using Google Docs, Google Slides has something called version history. So you can monitor in real time what the students are doing, and their name appears next to what they're typing on those platforms. So you can see who's doing what and how they've contributed. And again, if they know that you know that and you can see that, then that's more encouraging for them to kind of put in the work to show that they're contributing. And iPads as well, they have a system setting. It's an accessibility setting actually called guided access, where as the teacher you can set a password, and it basically locks down the iPad to just the app that they're in, so they can't switch between different apps and go and get distracted with pictures and games and things like that. So yeah, you can set up a shortcut where you just click the home button 3 times, and it starts. You put in the passcode, and then they're kind of locked into that app. But generally, just sticking within like one app to start with when you're introducing new things, like if you're starting a collaborative project or something like that. Yeah, and table positioning is something that obviously impacts on distractions and focus as well. I had a go making this little tool here, so you can kind of you can create your own seating plan based on your table arrangements and save that and use it later. So you're welcome to have a look at that later on. I'll send these links to you afterwards. It depends on the class, really, and it depends on the age and how that works. I like to have my class in kind of like L shapes, so they can still work together and see each other, but not necessarily facing each other. Yeah, but it's completely depends on the teacher. This is something, just as a little idea, if you want to start something that's where there's clear roles assigned to it. So it's a platform called Pear Deck, and there's an activity on there called Flashcard Factory. So kind of showing you a little bit here. This is just my example of but just for the purposes of showing you. So yeah, they either draw the picture or they write something and then they make this flashcard together. And if you've got, the whole class doing this, then they can make lots of these flashcards. And then at the end, you can save those, print them, and have them like to display, which is pretty cool. But that's yeah, it's worth exploring if you've not had a look at that before. Yeah, the other thing on this note as well, if you're starting out doing something collaborative and perhaps they're not used to it, then having something that's like they're working towards the same outcome or the same goal, but in a different space, then you've not got this opportunity to conflict. Sometimes if students are working on slides together on the same slides, then it can be a bit tricky to start with because things might get moved or deleted that someone else has done and can cause arguments and things, especially with younger children. So this is something I'd recommend to start as like a mirror task. So they're doing the same thing, but in a different space. This is something that I did with a teacher in year 4 recently. Essentially made this, it was a fact file for animals, essentially. So every slide had a different letter of the alphabet. The only things they can change on here are the text, the name of the animal, the text about it, and the picture. I've made this slide so they can only edit those 3 things. But then they're working with a partner. So to start with, we did, one partner does A, next one does B, and they kind of swap. So they're not working in the same space, but they're still working towards the same goal, if that makes sense. One person does the picture, one person does the text, and swap. It gets easier to manage as they get more experience with it. Yeah, and like I said, I would just stick with things that are familiar to start with. Don't try anything new or groundbreaking when you're first starting out with collaborative projects. It needs to be something that they're already familiar with. If you use Google Workspace and Google Slides a lot, then stick with something like that they already know. And then, yeah, just chat with other people about it as well. If there's other people that are interested in this and what you're working towards, then it's useful to pop into each other's classes, have conversations about it, maybe teach a lesson together, and it gives you a bit of energy, a bit of confidence with that as well. Inclusivity is another challenge as well. So this is, is everyone able to access in the same way? We're fortunate that we've got these devices and that they do have access to things like Translate. But it can be challenging. One of the first things that I did this year with my class for our computing lessons was looking at these types of tools, these accessibility tools, so they know how to customize their iPads in a way that suits them. So you've got things like Zoom, so to change the text size and things like that if they're finding it difficult to see, or changing to dark mode, or changing color filters, things like the reader as well. So on web browsers like Safari and Chrome, you've got this reader function where it removes everything that's distracting, like if there's pictures or adverts on the page, then it kind of removes that, and you've just got a simple background color that they can change, and the text and pictures if that's part of the text. But it just makes things so much easier because then there's no distractions. They can choose the kind of color and the font that suits them. Can be helpful with dyslexia and things like that as well. And obviously Translate as well, yeah, for EAL students, and apps like Google Translate. You've got this conversation tool where you can have a live conversation between 2 languages at the same time. It's useful as a teacher, but also for them communicating with other students too. Being able to translate photos and images from a camera is really useful. Being able to save phrases in a phrase book as a teacher, I find that really helpful as well. And also in Safari on the the main kind of web browser on iPads, you can translate directly into a language, which is really helpful. And one more thing, yeah, for inclusivity. So this is something that I'm trying to work on each year and get students more confident with a variety of different ways of showing their work and showing their understanding. So we try and cover quite a few different apps across the year that they can become more comfortable with, so that when it's time to show their work with like a project to show their understanding at the end of a unit, then they've got some options, they've got choices and how they present that, either on their own or in a group. So perhaps they show it in a film or a drawing or a mind map. But if they've got some kind of exposure to these types of apps, then they can use that later. So for example, if they were doing creating a project that shows the life cycle of a flower, you've got all these different options available, like creating a film or an animation about it, or a presentation, a model, a podcast, a website on Canva or something like that, and they've got all these tools that they can kind of take from if they've been introduced already. And that's just another way to make sure that everyone feels included and that their own learning styles are taken into account. In terms of challenges and things that can be a bit tricky to start out with, like assessing. How do you assess group work? It can be quite tricky. And something that I mentioned earlier was this version history thing. On Google Docs, Google Slides, you can go back to this later and you can then see, like in real time, who's contributed what at what point. So this is useful if they're working on a collaborative document. Then you can go back and see, who's contributed, who's added what to that document, so that you can see how well they've progressed and how well they've contributed to that project. We've used Padlet before. So this is like a kind of idea board that you can just kind of post. It's like adding post-its to a notice board, basically. So if you add a custom field that's like, you need to put your name on every post that you make, then it doesn't get lost and you don't look back at it later and wonder who wrote what. And that's just something I've found that works for me. So last little bit, just wanted to go through with you some inspiration, some ideas that might be helpful that you can take back and maybe try out as well. One of the things for collaboration, a digital whiteboards. And I love using digital whiteboards. Canva have just introduced this feature. I use this quite a lot, and yeah, they've just kind of released this collaboration whiteboard feature thing. I don't know if you used Jamboard before. Like I think that's discontinued now. But Google used to have something called Jamboard. It's like a collaborative whiteboard like this, basically. But yeah, Canva, Figjam is another one that's similar to Jamboard, and Padlet was the one I was talking about before, where you can just kind of add notes onto a board. But these are good for sharing ideas and mind mapping. You might present a question to them, for example, and they can just put post-it notes on the board and share their ideas, add their names to it. It works well for like smallish groups. Figjam, yeah, Figjam's got a bit more going on it, possibly better for older learners. I think like there's quite a few features that you can use, like adding stickers and badges, and like you can add music and things to it. It's a bit overly complicated, but it's good. It's got lots of features. And then yeah, Padlet, possibly, if you're exploring a new topic or something, come back to it later and add what they learned from that topic. And then co-writing, so working on a document together. This might be, creating instructions for something, or even like writing a script for a video or something like that. They could do kind of as a collaborative piece of writing, or a collaborative story where they write a paragraph each or something like that. This like suggestion feature as well, which is good, that as a teacher you can use, but also students can use it later to kind of offer suggestions to their group and add comments and things like that. Working on one iPad shared between two children, you can add someone as a partner, and then both of their progress is reflected on your dashboard, so you can see they both kind of worked on that together, which is quite useful. Just one person being in charge of handling the devices and kind of programming things, and the other person is offering suggestions, giving instructions possibly, and then rotating that as well. But you can do that, right down to year one. We've just started something last year in our school called Coding Buddies, where our older students go down to the younger classes. So we've had like year fives go into year ones, and they go down and basically sit with them, pair up to teach them how to code. It's really nice. We were trying to solve the problem of not having enough iPads in the lower school, like for year 1 and 2, because we've got a one-to-one program for year 3 to 6, but year 1 to 2 they share a very small number of iPads at the moment. So it was something that was kind of designed to solve that problem a little bit, but it's worked out really well. Things like Google Slides and Canva, you can work collaboratively. Google Slides actually have something called Applied Digital Skills. It's a bit more for older primary students, but it goes through, they're like lessons, but they're taught using kind of little clips of video. So you have like a 2 or 3 minute video, and then they go and do something after that, and then you watch the next part. It's quite well structured, and then they kind of follow through those steps. So something like an if-then story where they have to add text and pictures, but also like links to go to different slides. So if they click on they choose between two options: swim to the shore, get back in the boat, and then it takes them to the next part of the story. So this is a nice activity to work on in pairs. Basically, running things like this for schools, but also working with schools in person, online, doing some kind of consultations as well. So if it's something that you think your school would benefit from, and if you found this useful, interesting, then do just reach out and let me know if there's any other way that I can help you or the school. There's also on my website, I've got loads of kind of resources that I've gathered together, called it the EdTech Library, but it's basically just a collection of resources and platforms that you can use for various different areas of the computing curriculum and otherwise. So you could have a look at that. I've got about 30-ish videos up there at the moment. So it's a work in progress, but hopefully you'll find something useful on there. I've got quite a few things about iPad and Google and things like that. So yeah, on my website, on LinkedIn as well, I'm sharing articles and things that just offer up some ideas and kind of strategies and things that you can use to support with implementing technology.